Hey guys, welcome to Series World. Today I'm going to explain an erotic thriller series called Dark Desire from 2020. Turn on subtitles and spoilers ahead. The episode opens with Lucinda burning an old picture in the bathroom. She then burns Leonardo and Esteban's pictures too. The scene changes to Leonardo, who is in the hospital bed. Esteban comes to visit him. He brings coffee for him. Leonardo asks Esteban how they let him in, and Esteban reveals that he became friends with the guard. Esteban then asks about Leonardo and how he is feeling. Leonardo replies that he feels like the main character in a dream, who doesn't understand anything. The background changes to García, who is in the prison, talking with the man they caught earlier. The prisoner asks her what she wants, and she replies that to save him. Addressing the man as Brandon, García tells him that he knew Esteban, and she noticed how he looked at Esteban. García asks him who he talked to. Brandon tells her that he only just spoke to him on the phone and it's Esteban. Brandon adds that he recognized Esteban's voice when he was interrogated. The scene changes to Alma, who is talking with her psychiatrist. She tells her that Leonardo is under hospital arrest. He's on bail until he is discharged. The therapist asks whether that means that Esteban's suspicion turned out to be true. Alma tells her that would explain many things, like why Leonardo didn't want to talk about Brenda, or why he exhumed her body. Besides Brenda's death, they are also investigating him for tampering with evidence, and also for the murder of Vallejo. The investigators don't know whether Leonardo did it alone or with the help of Edith. They searched every nook and cranny in their house and his office. Alma expresses that, in a moment, Leonardo went from being a respected judge to a criminal. The therapist asks her how her heart feels, and she replies that her heart is an idiot. She then explains to the therapist that she has been betrayed by her loved ones, but her heart couldn't tell. She tells the therapist that she would like to kill both Leonardo and Brenda. The background changes to Zoe, who is searching for sodium poisoning with Karina on the internet. She then finds an article which says that a sudden blood sodium increase can cause seizures. Zoe realizes that somebody caused Leonardo to go into a coma. The story goes back to Esteban, who is telling Leonardo that they are bound by something more than blood, which is loyalty and secrets. They've always been there for one another. He tells Leonardo that he will always protect him. At the same time, a scene is being shown where Esteban is injecting something into Leonardo's saline bag. Leonardo falls asleep and Esteban puts the injection in his pocket. Nighttime comes. García is at Esteban's office. She shows the employee her police badge and tells him that she has a warrant to search Esteban's office. The employee agrees and leads her inside. The scene changes to Darío, who is having a nightmare about him being attacked by Esteban with a chainsaw. Darío jumps up from his nightmare. The story goes back to Alma, who is taking her class. Darío enters the classroom and sits down. She notices and continues to take her class. After the class ended, Darío followed her outside. He tells her they need to talk, and reveals that last night he dreamed about the place Esteban took him to, and he knows the place. It was a textile factory. At first, he thought it was a slaughterhouse because it smelled horrible, like rotten meat. The story goes back to García, who is talking with Edith. Edith tells her that the police have seized everything, and she won't find anything there. García replies that she didn't come to search the office. Rather, she wants to talk to Edith. She needs Edith's help to reconstruct every step Leonardo has taken since Brenda's death. Edith replies that she tried to help her in her unofficial investigation, but this is outside of her jurisdiction. She then tells Edith that right now, she is the only officer who believes that Leonardo is innocent. She tells Edith that if she doesn't talk now, she will have to face official interrogation. García then gets up to take a call. García asks the person named Sosa on the call whether they were able to retrieve information from the DVD. The story goes back to Leonardo, who is being checked up by the doctor. His memories seem to be a bit hazy, and his pupils are also diluted, but the doctor thinks it's the reaction to medication. Meanwhile, Esteban is scolding his employee because García needs a court order to investigate, but he still let García do it without a court order. The employee tries to explain that she had a police badge, but Esteban tells the employee that García still has no jurisdiction to search this place. Esteban asks what García searched, and he replies that she went upstairs, and she was there looking at his computer and took a disc. Esteban tells him that they'll talk about it later, and leaves. Esteban gets a call from Alma, but doesn't pick up. Meanwhile, García is at the police station calling someone, but they don't pick up. The other officer asks whether it's related to the video. The video of Alma reading a love poem is being shown on the computer. García tells the officer that even though it doesn't look like it, the video tells her many things. A video that places a certain person at a certain crime scene. She tells the other officer that she needs her to track the calls made to Brenda's phone on the day she died. The scene changes to Leonardo, who is being interrogated about whether he ordered to exhume Brenda's body, but Leonardo seems to be dizzy. He finally replies that he did. The officer again asks if this was related to Vallejo's disappearance, and he replies that it was related. Meanwhile, Zoe is asking the doctor about the interrogation. She tells her that it's illegal and Leonardo needs a lawyer. The doctor tells her that she knows, but she can't argue with them. And besides, they had a warrant. Zoe tells the doctor that she needs some other blood tests to be done on Leonardo, and the doctor informs her that they already did all the tests. Zoe tells her that she doesn't want to interfere with her job, but she thinks her dad is being poisoned. The scene changes to Esteban driving somewhere. Meanwhile, Darío has reached the abandoned factory. He is roaming around the factory and remembers what Lucinda told him. Lucinda tells him that his grandfather was a multimillionaire and owned several textile factories around the country. Antonio and Alberto were heirs, but his grandfather made Antonio the only heir, and Alberto wanted the inheritance. Alberto allied with Esteban to get Antonio convicted and managed to do so. Lucinda then tells him to look at his grandfather's factory. She tells him that Antonio's suicide changed everything and their plan failed. Years later, Alberto died, and now Darío is the only heir. Darío asks Lucinda how he can find the factory, and Lucinda replies that it's on the outskirts of the city, abandoned. As the case was closed, nobody knew about it except Lucinda and Antonio. The scene changes to Alma coming back to the hospital. She asks Zoe about the tests and what she expects to find from the tests. Zoe tells her that the seizures Leonardo had the night he was hospitalized were because of a blood sodium rise. That's why the doctor thought it was kidney failure. She remembers that if sodium is infused in small doses, it's not traceable, but still does the job. Zoe explains that someone is injecting Leonardo with sodium. Alma tells them that this might be the reason why Leonardo confessed, but Zoe tells her that this just explains the seizures. García says they could have injected him with other things too, any chemical substance that alters his will. Zoe says that they don't know this until they do some tests. García asks whether someone else was alone with Leonardo, and Alma tells her that access was only restricted to family members. The scene changes to Esteban, who breaks into the police office and steals the evidence. Darío is currently in the factory. He remembers the time he spent with his father in this factory. Antonio tells him that he can achieve anything in life if he is determined, like his grandfather. Antonio shows him the factory and tells Darío that everything there belongs to his grandfather. He also tells him that maybe one day they'll become the owners. The scene changes to Edith, who is being questioned by the press about Leonardo outside her office. She doesn't comment on anything and leaves. She asks the other employee about how this information got leaked into the media, and they reply that they'll look into it. Meanwhile, Zoe is watching the news on TV with Leonardo about his case. Leonardo is frustrated about what he did. He wonders to Zoe whether he was drugged or not. He tells her that he doesn't know whether he has killed Brenda. The story goes back to Darío, who finds a chainsaw, a bloodied table, and some bloody bags in the factory. Meanwhile, Zoe is telling Leonardo that he didn't kill Brenda because Brenda was Alma's friend. Leonardo tells her that he has a past that she doesn't know, and he's ashamed of it. Zoe then asks whether it's about Dario's dad, and also tells him that Darío told her about it. She adds that Leonardo tried to bribe Dario's mom, and he told her that. Zoe asks Leonardo whether he knows Lucinda. She tells him that Lucinda is Antonio's wife, who committed suicide in prison 10 years ago. Leonardo replies that he remembers the suicide as it was the same day as her birthday. He tells her that he knew her, and adds that there were suspicions that incriminated Antonio, but they were mere suspicions. He just needed to find a culprit to deliver to the authorities. Meanwhile, Darío finds an old photo of his dad in the factory. He is still roaming there. He goes through the files and finds a copy of the deed regarding this factory and some other files. The story goes back to Alma, who is telling García and Edith what Darío told her about Esteban. Edith asks whether he butchered Brenda's body there, and Alma agrees that's a possibility. García is still confused as to why Esteban would just torture Darío and not kill him. Alma replies that because she knew that Darío was with him. The scene changes to Zoe, who is assuring Leonardo that they will prove him innocent. But Leonardo is not so sure, as Esteban has told him that there's evidence against him. Leonardo tells her that this is the end and there's no way out. The background changes to Esteban, who has reached the factory. He starts pouring gasoline over everything in the factory. Meanwhile, García is telling Alma and Edith that one of the videos of Brenda's house is missing, and Edith asks what if Esteban was there during this gap. Alma tells them that if Esteban and Brenda were together, why isn't Leonardo's fingerprint found in the evidence? Garcia explains that most of the evidence never made it to the lab because Esteban insisted on closing the case. Leonardo is shown again crying and screaming. The doctor and Zoe rush to him. He holds his eyes and tells them that it's the light. The doctor rushes him to do a CT scan. The guard tries to stop them, but the doctor tells him that it's an emergency and explains it's a probable subarachnoid hemorrhage. They need a CT scan. Zoe also goes with them. The scene changes to Darío, who is hiding in a corner after seeing Esteban in the factory. Meanwhile, Garcia is telling Alma that there's been a call from Brenda to Esteban's phone at 1:06 a.m. Alma asks whether they can find out what they talked about and gets a call from Darío. He informs her about Esteban being in the factory and tells her to call the police. Darío attacks Esteban from behind and tells him that he knows everything. The background changes to the hospital, and the doctor and the guard find Zoe unconscious in the room while Leonardo is missing. The scene changes back to Darío, who is telling Esteban that he used his mom, and asks what he offered her in exchange. He also says that Esteban used Brenda to testify against his dad. Esteban escapes Dario's grasp and threatens him using a lighter to burn everything down. Police reach the factory and start going inside when Alma gets a video call from Darío expressing his love for her and saying his last goodbye. Right when the call ends, the whole factory bursts into flames. The episode ends with Alma crying in Garcia's arms while the whole factory is burning on fire. To watch more explanations of these kinds of series, click on the videos on your screen. And don't forget to let me know how you feel about today's video in the comments down below. And at last, thanks for watching.